I'm Idiotech, and today we're going to take a look at Forced Showdown for PC. So this game retails for $19.99 US. It recently released on Steam. It's an arena brawler with twin-stick shooting mechanics combined with Hearthstone, strangely enough. As you can see, there's a bunch of cards here. Now, the easiest way for me to demonstrate this game to you is simply to jump right into it and play it and show you how it works, so that's what we're going to do. But before we do that, I just want to quickly show you the settings menu. So we have a reasonable audio options menu. We also have a pretty decent graphics options menu. Now, this is a very nice looking game. It's simplistic in its design, but it's also a good looking game, and it has a number of options here for us to play with. So I'm getting good performance in this game so far. It's locked at 60 FPS for me with VSync, and I'm having no issues at all. So things seem fine on a GTX 980. Finally, we have input setup, which allows us to rebind our keys, which is very useful. And then we have Twitch support. Basically, this allows you to log in with your Twitch ID, and you'll get some benefits and boosts and things like that. The game's very heavily focused on the idea of streaming, which is cool. Okay, so let's jump into the game itself. So we have 3 programs. Now, this is basically a television show. Something akin to Hunger Games in a sense, but more with wizards and monsters and things like that. It's quite a cool concept. So, the game is hard. First off, we're going to jump into the Crucible. So, this menu's pretty basic. We have 4 different heroes to choose from. I currently have 3 unlocked. They're all different. They all have different abilities here on the left-hand side of the screen. And I'm going to play with the Paladin type class for this video. I find it the easiest one to play right now. It's not as complicated, and this game can be quite challenging. Over here, we have our companions. So we have this one. He can fly out of the way if he takes damage, and he does single target projectile damage. This guy over here has an area of effect strike that life steals, which I find more useful, so that's what I'm going to go with for this run. Over here, we can choose our decks. Now, this is a basic deck I made for this class. I'll go into this in more detail later, but this is the one I'm going to use. So let's start up the game. Loading times are pretty reasonable in this title. I don't tend to have to wait particularly long, although this time it seems that I do. But for the most part, things are fine, and loading times between arenas seem completely reasonable, so this is slightly unusual. The game does not usually take this long to load. Okay, here we go. So when you first start up an arena, it does this nice introduction. It basically tells you you're part of a galactic TV show. It's essentially the Hunger Games with wizards and warriors, which is a fine concept. So this is the Crucible. We have to work our way through a number of arenas and work our way towards this section, which will then unlock this final boss, which we then have to defeat. Okay, so this is me, and this is my little friend over here. So the controls work like this. We have W, A, S, and D to move, and then we look around with the mouse. This game does support controller, and the controller works fine for those of you who prefer to play twin-stick shooters on a controller. Okay, so this blue line over here leads up to this section here. Now, basically what we need to do is earn enough energy to unlock this boss mission here, so we can progress through this gate onto the next section. These are 4 arena types that we can choose from. We have to complete 2 of them in order to unlock the next boss. So you can see here we have battle rules. We have gotta go fast, we have heat wave, we have 2 toys, and we have quick minions. So these are all modifiers. Let's jump into this one, 2 toys, and I'll show you how everything works. Okay, so start with 2 random consumables, which is a very nice bonus to have, but unfortunately we have additional enemies as a result. So this is the boss we're going to have to beat in this section. We're just going to wait for it to load up, shouldn't take too long. And then this is us with our specific minion that we've chosen. Loading times seem to be a lot longer today for some reason. Maybe they've updated. Fight. Okay, so this is how the game works. First off, we get a simple selection of cards from our card pool. We can choose to mulligan those cards, which is cool. It's very much like Hearthstone. I'm going to mulligan the more expensive stuff, so these 2, and hopefully get something a little bit more useful for the early game. Okay, so we have a mana boost, which I can use. It costs me nothing. It gives me an extra mana, which is nice. However, I don't really want to spend it on any of these right now. I don't have a great card selection, so I'm not going to bother spending any mana this turn. Now, before we get into this, I want to explain the user interface to you. So at the beginning of each arena, i.e. turn, you will get to choose a card. Or you can play 3 cards or 4 cards, depending on how much mana you have. Down here we have our mana bar. Now every time we beat an area in this arena, we get an extra mana point. So basically at the end of each turn we gain more mana, very similar to Hearthstone if you've played Hearthstone. Over here we have our companion's health, we also have our own health, we have our personal stats, as well as the abilities that we have. I'll show you the abilities in a second once we get into combat. Up here in the top left hand corner of the screen, we have these pips. These are the arenas we have to beat in order to gain access to the boss, and then we beat the boss and then we can progress forward. Here this indicates points which we pick up off the ground. Enemies will drop them when they die and they're very useful. They give us boons, which I'll explain later. This indicates what kind of modifier we have on this arena, and I should point out that each arena is procedurally generated and the monsters you encounter seem to be different each time. Up here we have the boss and his ability, so he can build stone prisons, and he'll do that periodically every 7 seconds on the map. You'll see this in action. Now, there are 4 additional slots down here. These are for consumable items. These 2 cards right here are consumables. You can trigger them whenever you want after you've played them. Down here we have Scroll of Raining Daggers, deals 40 unavoidable damage to everything, including yourself. Replenish at the end of each arena. And then we have Chaotic Illumination. So these 2 abilities are relatively useful, and they come from this modifier. Every time you play the map, you get different modifiers, so every time you play, it's different. So once you've made your decisions regarding cards, you click your player, and then you begin to fight. So, this guy has a basic ability with his left click, and that's his right click right there that I just triggered. It's called an overcharge. Now, occasionally there is stuttering. I get the odd frame hitching here and there. It seems to be when it's transitioning between arena to arena, like when I complete the arena, for example, which is a little bit odd, but for the most part, things seem to perform relatively fine. So this is my left click. It charges up over time, and eventually it will burst out like that and do a very powerful beam. My right click is this big AoE overcharge. Shit, I need to actually fight these guys. Your health does not replenish between arenas, by the way. I've just activated my shield with my E key, which is very useful for mitigating damage. Okay, so I've completed this area. Not particularly difficult, it was Arena 1. So just to reiterate, this is my beam, it charges up over time, and then eventually it will do a massive burst. This is my overcharge on my right click, and if I press E, it will enable a shield for a brief period of time. And then finally, I have a passive ability which gives me, when your attack beam of light hits twice as fast for 2 seconds. So that's basically how this character works. Now, other characters are more complicated. Okay, so when we've completed an arena, we stand in this ring and we progress. So that's basically how it works. Each of the different kinds of enemies in this game have very different mechanics. You will have to dodge things and mitigate shields and things like that. It's actually quite deep. Okay, so we have 2 mana now, so we can play this card, which I think I'm going to do. This basically just increases the range of my beam, which is, you know, relatively useful. As you can see, once I play a card like that, it becomes a permanent buff, and it stays there on the left-hand side of the screen. You can stack these things, so you can have like 4 of those, and it will stack the damage and length and stuff like that, which is really cool. And by the end of the arena, you should have as many of these as possible to be as tough as possible so you can beat the boss. That's the overall goal. Okay, occasionally you will get screwed by RNG. That is the nature of a card game. Okay, so let's bust our way through here. The levels are also highly destructible, which is a very nice feature. It doesn't really do much. It just is nice. It's a nice visual flair. It would be cool, I guess, if there was something in those boxes occasionally. Yeah, this isn't great. I'm getting kind of wrecked here. I'm going to put my shields on and get the hell out of this area. Oh my god, I'm completely locked up. This is bad. Wow, I'm dead. Wow, okay. We'll try that again. That was horrific. Sometimes I found that when you play, occasionally you will get very, very hard missions, and then other times you'll get very easy missions. It doesn't seem hugely balanced in that regard. Okay, so this is how it works when you lose. We have to beat this boss, this big boss, then this boss, and then this big boss to beat the Crucible, and it can be challenging. I've gotten to this point a number of times, died on the second to last level of the final boss, and then had to restart from the entire beginning. It does not save your progress, which can be frustrating for those of you who are not, you know, in favor of that type of mechanic. If you're used to roguelikes and things like that, then you'll have no problem with that. But for me personally, I find that a little frustrating. Let's jump back in and try again. Same setup as before. I just want to show you a boss at the very least. I won't screw it up this time. You can skip those cutscenes, which is nice. So let's jump through here. Let's go straight in. I won't have to explain anything this time, so hopefully we can get through quite quickly. Let's do 2 toys again. This can be quite good. I like 2 toys. Okay, same situation as before. We have to beat this guy this time, Frank the Everling. So you get different bosses each time, and you'll see the environment is also very different. It's actually probably good that I died so I can show you some different environments. As for the art style and the aesthetic overall, I think it's very nice. The card art here is great. The environmental detail is very good. It reminds me a lot of Heroes of the Storm, as well as Torchlight, which isn't a bad thing. Both of those games look great. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this one and this one. Hopefully I get a better hand this time as well. So I want to play this as soon as possible. It increases the damage of my overcharge, but right now we can't really do much, so let's just jump in and kill some of these human guys in the human realm. You can see why I'm saying it reminds me of Heroes of the Storm. You know, this reminds me very much of that map with the flowers on it. But that's not a bad thing. The game looks great. I just picked up some points there. Those blue orbs I'm picking up are points. Okay, so let's just work our way through here. You know, and the mechanics, these human characters are not particularly challenging, I will be honest. Some arenas and monsters are a lot more difficult to deal with than others, and that's a balance concern, you know? It really is, because I found myself sometimes progressing much further into levels just simply because I'm fighting humans, rather than, you know, guys who throw rockets and bombs at me. As you can see up here, he drops laser grenades, which is a thing that you may have noticed with those beams of fire on the ground. Okay, let's jump into this and get through this as quickly as possible. What consumables do we have, by the way? We have Fairy Bottle, that's very useful, and Chaotic Illumination. Okay, so let's burn our way through here. Let's kill this guy. So for me, the combat is fun. It's very impactful. It has a good sense of just power to everything you're doing, you know, especially when there's a lot of clutter and you use your overcharge, for example. Like, blowing all that stuff up feels really satisfying. The sound effects as well in this game are exceptionally good. Okay, so that's completed. Now, obviously, this is the very early stages of the Crucible, so if this looks easy, it's because it is. But once you get to the final boss in this entire run, you will find this game hard. Okay, so Fusion Power, let's trigger that. Now, that will increase the damage of my overcharge by a significant amount, as you can see there. Now, there was some hitching there, as you may have noticed, and I have seen that occasionally with certain particle effects, and that's a shame, because it would be nice if that didn't happen. Okay, there we go. It didn't happen that time. But now I'm doing a lot more damage with my overcharge. I really like that card. Okay, so we've taken these guys out. Now the goal here is you don't heal between levels. You can pick up health globes, which is nice, but you will not just automatically heal between levels. And if you run out of health, as you saw before, you will just straight up die. You have to maintain your health all the way. Now you do have cards that will replenish your health, but you only have 2 of them in your deck, so they're kind of limited, and it's a 30-card deck. Okay, so as you can see here, I have minor heals, 1 and 2. Hopefully they will be useful for us later. Right now I have 4 mana. I don't really want to use a heal right now because I'm not low enough to justify the expense, so I think I'm going to go with this, which basically means if anyone touches me, there's a 30% chance I will electrocute them, which is a nice feature for defense. Okay, so let's overcharge these guys. Knock this out. I'm triggering my shield on a regular basis, by the way. It also tells you via little icons when certain abilities have come off cooldown, which I think is a great feature. Without having to look down in the bottom left-hand corner, you know whether or not your abilities are off cooldown. So, and, you know, the presentation's great. You know, I can't complain about this game in many ways. I really enjoy it. My only major issue so far has just been the fact that if you do fail late into a challenge, you will be heavily punished for that. And you're not rewarded much for the time you've put in, which is a shame. You do get access to cards, and I will show you that in a moment. Okay, so we have 5 mana now. I'm going to increase my health by 80 instead of healing myself, because it will give me some additional health, and I did need to heal up a bit there. Okay, so this is this guy. Let's kill this. Let's kill this archer. There are different mechanics to these enemies, by the way. I'm just kind of plowing through them pretty quickly. Shit, I did not mean to run into that fire beam. Okay, so that's completed. I just want to get to the first boss so I can show you how boss mechanics work, because the boss design in this game is actually quite good. Okay, now we're going to use a heal, I think. Are we? Are we going to use a heal, or are we going to use this mana and give ourselves some extra damage? That's what we're going to do. We're going to give ourselves some extra damage, and hopefully not die, not screw this up. Okay, we've just triggered this guy off. That's not great. So you can see my companion's doing damage there, which is nice. He's very useful, and he just died, which is a shame. Okay, let's kill these statues as quickly as possible. Okay, he's down. Enemies with yellow health are a lot tougher, by the way. Okay, that's done. I've got 24 points so far. Not bad. There's also treasure goblins in this game, which is kind of a nice touch. Basically, you'll see these guys with carts, and they'll have a bunch of gold. You can hit them for gold, and you can spend that gold on cards later. Okay, so now I'm totally going to heal myself. I'm probably going to spend some mana on this. As you can see here, if I just hover over this. Hang on, I'm in the middle of a fight. I can't do that right now. Should have explained that card to you. I apologize. Alright, this game does get a little chaotic. I'm trying to maintain as much health as possible so I can get into the boss fight maxed out, basically. Okay, that's doing reasonable damage now. It would be nice if I had a few more exciting cards to show you. You do get some pretty unique combinations of cards in this game, and every time you play, your build will be very different, so the way that you play your character will be different almost every time you play, even though they do have the same basic abilities. You'll end up speccing and gearing them with your cards in such a way that it feels very different every time you play. Okay, so here's the boss, Frank the Everling. Oh, this guy, he does like this crazy ability. I hope I can dodge it. Okay, so I'm going to increase this again. I'm also going to get 2 of these duo bots, which are very useful. These are consumables. Basically, it gives me rocket launchers on my arms, which is nice. Now this, kill all non-boss enemies below 50% health. That's not going to be hugely helpful to us. And Fairy Bottle is very useful for heals, so I'm probably going to use that initially as we jump into the fight. Healing myself right now is a bit redundant, but I may as well. Alright, let's get into this. So I'm going to hit 1, that's going to trigger the fairy heal. Every time this spinning fairy thing hits him, I get healed, which is a nice feature. I'm also going to trigger my rockets, so hopefully we can do some damage to him. Okay, so now he's gone into this form. We have to dodge these explosions that are coming down. It gets quite intense. Okay, let's take out these guys. Is he back yet? Yes, he is. I've still got my rockets on, as you can see. He's not done a huge amount of damage to me just yet. I am avoiding him quite well. I've just triggered my shield. Okay, he's got his laser beam on. That's not great for me. I'm gonna hide over here. Okay, these fire things are not great. Okay, so now he's shooting rockets up into the air, and I have to find a way to dodge them. Otherwise, they pretty much insta-kill you, which is not great. Okay, shielding. My companion has died, sadly. Let's trigger some more rockets, because I do have another one of those. Hopefully we can take this guy down. Yes, we can. So that's the first boss. As you can see, there are a number of mechanics involved in that fight, and as you progress through the game, the mechanics of each boss become more and more complicated. It's actually quite challenging in the later stages. Okay, so we got 35 points from that. Now, I just want to show you these mechanics quickly. Okay, so you can see this is half full now. If we go in here and beat another arena, that will fill up, unlock this, which is a bigger boss, and once we've done that, we can repeat this whole process over again through this gate and up these stairs, and then we'll finally complete the Crucible. But I do want to show you this. So this is a boon. So we've unlocked a boon. Now, this is a permanent passive buff that we get from getting points in the level. So the more enemies you kill, you know, the more points you get, and therefore the more boons you get. So we have +1 mana in the first card phase. That can be very useful. We have 20% companion damage. We have 25% damage to summoned enemies, which is awesome. And 20 health up. Now, I tend to die, so I'm going to go with the health up. So now you can see I have a boon here. When I earn 45 points, it's going to unlock the next one. And these just keep coming and coming and coming. And as you can see over here, it's now stacking. So by the end of the Crucible, you should have quite a lot of passive buffs, which is a nice feature. So that's basically how the game works. You rinse and repeat that over and over again, and you beat the Crucible, or you don't. In my case, you don't. So down here, I just want to show you this. We have boons, as you can see. We have quests. Now, this is another feature of the game. As you can see here, this is a quest. It rewards 10 health permanently, which is really cool. 500 gold, which is a nice boost. And in order to get that, we have to play a spell, an upgrade, and a consumable card in one turn. We have to win a battle without picking up any health globes, which can be a bit tricky. And then finally, we have this one down here, which is hidden. But once we unlock that and we complete it, we'll then complete that quest and we'll get those rewards, which is a nice feature. It adds goals and objectives to each arena that you otherwise might not consider. You know, you wouldn't normally go out of your way to not pick up health globes, but in this case you want to, so you can get this achievement and get some extra gold and buy some cards, which is a nice feature and I think it's good. My only complaint is that this isn't particularly laid out in a very interesting or intuitive way, and they could have handled that differently. But overall, I think this quest system is a nice additional feature to the title. We can also check out our deck. to make sure what cards we have before we go into battle, but we cannot change that mid-battle. Mid-arena, you can't change that, and I think that kind of sucks. It would be nice to be able to change your deck halfway through the Crucible, for example, to deal with certain kinds of bosses, but hey, that's probably a balance concern. Okay, so that's how that works. Let's back out of this. So as you can see here, we completed the first boss, but we didn't complete the second boss, and we earned 47 gold as a result, which is a nice reward. Now, as you progress through each of these, as I said before, you will earn more gold, more rewards, which is nice. Problem is, as I said, if you get to this and die, you'll have to restart the entire process again. For those of you who find that kind of gameplay frustrating, like myself, then maybe this game isn't for you. But if you're used to those types of mechanics and you like roguelikes and you like that whole like risk reward of like, oh, I did it so I feel great, but I lost so I feel terrible, you're okay with that, you don't mind that frustration, then this is a fantastic game. It really is. I can't really complain about it too much. I just want to jump into this section here just to show you how we get cards. So you can see here I have 111 gold. It costs 100 gold to spin the Wheel of Fortune, so let's spin it. Okay, please give me 400 gold. Fantastic. Okay, so 400 gold is great, obviously, because now I can spin it 4 more times. Okay, it's a green card. Cool. So green cards are common cards. 10% damage, that's pretty reasonable. Let's spin this again. Okay, this time we got draw a card and heal 15 times its mana cost. Okay, that's pretty cool. I'm still getting commons. I want something other than a common. 15 damage and draw 1 card. That's pretty nice. Come on, give me something epic. Okay, at least I got an uncommon. Oh, this works for my Paladin class as well, so you do get class-specific cards. Guardian of Light gains... Yeah, right, okay, cool. So that's how that works, basically. You spin to win. It's very much like CSGO or any other system. You can also pick up crystals, and those crystals you can spend to forge cards of a specific class. So that's how that system works. Quests I've already shown you. Finally, we have the card selection and deck building tools. This is virtually identical to Hearthstone, and that's not a bad thing. We can go through consumables, spells, and upgrades, which are the 3 different types of cards available here. We can search for specific cards. We can also search by mana cost, which is a really nice feature. We can switch between all neutral and class-specific cards, which is, again, another nice feature. It's also nice that there are class-specific cards in this game because it does give flavor to each of the classes. Even though the classes do play very differently from one another, it's nice to have buffs for those specific abilities that they have. And finally, you can build a deck just by clicking this button here, going into here and selecting a bunch of cards. Again, very, very similar to the way that Hearthstone is laid out, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's an excellent game, and so is this. Finally, we have the watch button, which will take you directly to Twitch TV, where you can watch the game. So, what do I think of this title overall? I think the presentation is fantastic, both in the card design. The UI design for the most part is really good. The art style in the actual game itself, the particle effects, the combat, it feels very weighty and real and nice. Everything about this title looks and sounds great. Gameplay-wise, I find it very compelling. There's a lot of different kinds of mechanics. The boss mechanics are quite fun and interesting. It feels like an ARPG like Diablo or something along those lines. It's a very well-made game, and I find it very enjoyable and satisfying. I love the originality of the concept. Having a card mechanic like this combined with an arena brawler is a really interesting and unique idea that I'm personally enjoying quite a lot. My only major criticism is the fact that as you do progress, your progression isn't saved. Now, for some people, as I said, that won't be an issue. It is kind of an issue for me personally, and it does lead to frustration. It does lead to me not wanting to play the game that much, which is a shame, you know, but that's personal preference. But overall, I have to recommend this title. It's a fantastic game for a very reasonable price. It has great production values. It's a very original concept. It controls great settings, perfect performance, no issues at all. It's a really solid indie title, and the developers should be very proud of themselves. If you found this video helpful or useful in some way, please let me know in the comments below. If you disagree with something I said, feel free to let me know also. And if you want to support the channel, please like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.